Now, in our Motoring Friday newsroom crossing, VW is facing trouble in Germany. The automotive giant is mulling the closure of 2 factories in the region for the first time in its 87-year history as they transition away from fossil fuels ways. The company has also made a U-turn on its 3-decade-long German jobs pledge. David Furlonger, editor-at-large for the Financial Mail, joins us with more detail. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
It's quite fascinating to me that VW is at such a point where they are considering closing plants when we've been talking. Obviously, we know the regulations and we know the targets, zero emissions by 2030, 2035. But at the same time, we've seen demand for EVs slowing down. So for me, it's not matching that things are happening so quickly at VW.
It's not just around EVs. Clearly, the EV slowdown has affected them, as it has affected everybody else. And let's not forget, VW is not the only multinational in trouble.
Yes.
If you look at recent results, Stellantis disappointing, Nissan very disappointing. What marks VW out is that as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, they were the world's biggest motor company.
Yes.
And it's been a bit of a come down. I think people have had their eye on them since that Dieselgate scandal a few years ago. And I think what is concerning, though, is that for them, it's around not the collapse, but the very much a slowdown in the German economy, which is not expected to grow this year. Growing competition from China. There are all kinds of problems hitting VW at the same time. Even a silly little thing, I mean, as you're probably aware, the European Union is trying to stop the import of Chinese EVs into the Union.
Yes.
VW, although it's a European company, builds many of its EVs in China, and it's not going to be able to get its EVs from China
to Germany.
into Europe and into Germany without paying huge
tariffs as well there.
Yeah.
That is actually quite interesting. So really, would you say that it's kind of a perfect storm of headwinds here, where it's not just the fact that there is the struggle to move away from fossil fuels to cleaner motors?
Yeah, I was going to avoid using that expression,
Yeah.
the perfect storm. It had occurred to me. But yes, it really is caught in the middle. So it hasn't handled the electric vehicle transition as well as some companies have. But also the fact that Europe generally is struggling. Germany is struggling economically.
Yeah.
VW is expected this year and next year to sell 500,000 fewer cars.
Wow.
That is the equivalent of 2 factories in Germany. Now, as you say, it's the first time in the company's history. They're talking about potentially laying off workers at 6 plants. But they're saying that it's not going to happen tomorrow, although there is talk of laying off people from the middle of next year. But the company is saying they've got 1, maybe 2 years to fix it. But they've got no spare time at all.
So, I mean, you've said that it's not the only multinational automotive company that is in trouble. Are all of them now, or most of them, kind of struggling with competitiveness because of the Chinese motor industry?
That is a big part of it. It's also because of confusion over electric vehicle rules in the EU and in the UK, where there is a view that things are happening too quickly. Stellantis, for example, has got a lot of brands. There's a question mark over whether it's got too many brands. Nissan's problems are General Motors, Ford is cutting its spending on electric vehicles down from 40% to 30% of its R&D budget. So everyone is, well, not everyone, but many companies are losing money at the moment and having to redesign the way they do business.
That's the thing, redesigning. Does that mean then a complete strategy overhaul for a lot of these companies?
Not so much an overhaul. I mean, they've been doing the overhaul for the last few years.
Yes.
The problem is that the rules keep changing. So that makes it very, very difficult to have a sustainable program if you're not quite sure what's happening. And of course, with China now coming more and more into the mix, which is undercutting everybody on price, China now is opening up factories in Europe. So it really is making it very difficult. But of course, then in Germany, as I said, no economic growth expected this year.
Yeah.
One of the problems is the Ukraine war. Germany's lost all its cheap gas. All its costs have gone up. Manufacturing costs have gone up. VW is one of the worst affected by that. Everything is hitting it at the same time.
Of course, I have to ask about VW in Africa, because I think just a few months ago, we even spoke about an investment that VW, the parent company, made to VW Africa. Does this affect the African business in any way?
I actually spoke to VW here about an hour ago. The 4 billion rand investment which they're making is solid. It's not changing. That's in their Kariaga plant in the Eastern Cape. They're going to be launching a new small SUV in 2026, so in 2 years' time. They are probably one of the most secure VW plants around the world, because Africa is one of the few areas in the world where volumes are nowhere near where they should be. If you look at the history of Africa, no one has understood it for the last 100 years. They've started to, and VW probably understands it better than most other companies. So it is the future for VW in Africa, which, as people have said, is the final frontier for motor companies.
So they'd never let go of that growth opportunity?
I will never say never, but it is extremely unlikely that they will do so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and giving us insights on that, David. That was David Furlonger, Editor-at-Large for the Financial Mail.